Good evening. My name is Deirdre Cross, and I'm the Director of the Office of Public Programs here at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program entitled Designing for Rest and Relaxation. The program has been organized in association with the Reclaiming My Time exhibition curated by NAMAC, Curator of Design and Architecture, Michelle Wilkinson, which features works by contemporary Black designers that engages ideas about cultural heritage, bodies at rest, and histories of labor and leisure. Alluding to the phrase popularized by Maxine Waters during a 2017 hearing of the House Financial Services Committee, reclaiming my time has become an anthem for those refusing to let their time be taken, hearkening to everyone's need for restorative environments where we go to reconnect with what truly matters: tranquility, health, companionship, and most of all, free time. To advance these ideas, artists from the exhibition will explore topics such as creative philosophies, practices, and goals, as well as the importance of art and design in making space and reclaiming time and history. Joining us this evening is Sheila Bridges, the longtime host of Sheila Bridges, designer living on the Fine Living Network, a lifestyle show featuring new locales, design professionals, and trends. Ms. Bridges has also authored 2 books, Furnishing Forward, A Practical Guide to Furnishing for a Lifetime, and The Bald Mermaid, a memoir, which was published in 2013. Rochelle Baker is a multidisciplinary artist from Detroit, Michigan, with a background in relief printing. Her area of expertise lies in community-based projects and co-design. She closely collaborates with users, drawing from a multitude of perspectives and needs to design solutions that deeply resonate with a diverse user base. Next is Stephen Burks, an industrial designer, product development consultant, and educator whose innovative approach to design synthesizes craft, community, and industry. He has had solo exhibitions and led curatorial projects at the Studio Museum in Harlem, Burke's Man-Made at the Studio of Art and Design, Are You a Hybrid? At the High Museum of Art. Norman Teague is a Chicago-based designer and educator focused on specializing in custom furniture. Teague served as lead craftsman and co-founder of the Design Apprenticeship Program at the University of Chicago's Art Incubator. One of his recent shows, Everlasting Plastics 2023 Venice Architecture Biennale, draws from Bolga and Agassiche basket weaving techniques and reinterpreted traditional vessels through recycled materials, in that case, extruded plastics. Moderating this distinguished panel is none other than Robin Gavin, the Pulitzer Prize-winning senior critic at large for the Washington Post. She is also the author of The Battle of Versailles, the night American fashion stumbled into the spotlight and made history, which is her first solo book. Please join me in a warm welcome for our panelists.
Hello, and thank you all so much for coming. And I hope that you've had a chance to see the exhibition, but even if you have not, I think that you will still be Really excited to hear what our panelists have to say, and I think you'll be enticed into seeing the exhibition. I wanted to start, I think, with Rochelle. Hello down there. One of the interesting things about the piece of yours that's in the exhibition, which is this beautiful illustration, is you talk a bit about being, having been influenced by artists like Michelangelo Thomas and Claude Monet. I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about the way that you envision relaxation in the work that's in the exhibition, and also the way in which those artists have influenced you.
Well, for my work in the exhibition, I feel like sometimes rest is seen as a luxurious thing.
It's called Kitten Meal, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is. I thought you were talking about the other. Sorry. For Kitten Meal, I feel like I was thinking about how usually, for me at least, rest is seen as luxurious, and I tend to treat rest as something that I have to earn, but that's not necessarily the case and shouldn't be the case. I'm learning more and more that it's something that you deserve. And in that piece, I just want to show, I use my two friends as my muses who have a better understanding of using rest or having rest as something that you deserve in that piece, and kind of using food and drink and relaxation in that to show that.
I mean, I feel like it's a very intimate piece because it shows these two women with cocktails, and there's appetizers set out before them. I couldn't tell if it was avocado toast, but I thought maybe it was avocado toast. And I was curious about, one, why you called it Kitten Meal. And I was also struck by the fact that the women are not looking directly at the viewer. They seem to be sort of almost enjoying themselves in spite of the viewer.
Yeah, and enjoying each other. I just wanted to show kind of their relationship, their closeness, and for the name Kitten Meal, it's kind of just like an assortment of 10 fish. I guess something that like a cartoon kitten would eat. But yeah, I wanted it to be inviting, but also like inviting the viewer a little bit, but also really showing their connection, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I wanted to move on to Stephen. And you have a truly just magnificent armchair in the exhibition. It's called The Traveler. And it almost seemed like that was a bit of an ironic title because, in fact, it is a chair that invites you to sit and to curl up and to stay a while, but it's called The Traveler. I was wondering, one, if that was kind of a juxtaposition that you intended, or I just completely misread that. And also, the way in which the chair is shaped, the fact that it is, it sort of surrounds the sitter, but it also doesn't hide the sitter.
Yeah, wow. I want to first begin by thanking everyone for being here tonight. I think this is really an incredible moment. I especially want to thank Michelle Wilkinson for making this happen. A little round of applause. Before I answer your question, I think it's worth mentioning that that we are all, Black and brown folks in this country, are all children of liberation struggles, right? And it's only recently that, fairly recently, in my parents' lifetime, for example, that we've had the freedom to choose to rest, right? So the idea of claiming one's time is, I think, very interesting. And the title is clearly about us, right? And about this kind of, the imagination that's required to, if you can imagine, right? Or imagination that's required to kind of to see oneself as being free enough, right, to do what you want, to claim your time. And I think it's also worth mentioning that given the fact that I have been the first and only Black designer to work for all of my clients, it's also fairly recent that we're in a position to design for rest. And so I just want to commend my fellow panelists here for being part of that. And when I was thinking about The Traveler, this is a very important piece for me because it was derived from the idea of a designer really being dropped in the middle of nowhere, a designer without the kind of modern day tools, a designer that would be forced to kind of transcend their circumstances, right? Much like our ancestors, to imagine what a chair could be. And so the kind of improvised frame that we're using in The Traveler, the name itself, right? Actually very much inspired by Thomas Struth's Paradise series of photographs, if you're familiar with those. Thinking about other places in the world where one might find themselves and one might have to kind of, create a chair. And so that frame and that structure, and over, I think it's about 180 meters of leather cord woven over The Traveler by hand, those are the things that I thought you could do yourself, in a sense. And so for me, it's about using your imagination to travel, and this is something that you could do while resting, right? So we're free to kind of dream when we rest. That's the idea of The Traveler.
And was there a particular reason why you wanted it to have that almost sort of womb-like shape, the way that it kind of comes, it doesn't just hold your back, but it also comes up over your head?
Yeah, I wanted it to quite literally envelop the user. And so there's also a footstool that comes with it, so you can put your feet up. But sitting back in it, to have the impression that you're in a kind of micro-architectural environment, that the chair itself is protecting you from the environment around you, and in a sense, allowing you to kind of escape through it.
There's another, well, there are many chairs in the exhibition, but one of the other chairs in the exhibition was designed by Norman, and it is a destabilizing chair. And I was listening to a talk that you did that was online, and you were showing these images from, I think it was the Milan furniture show, and it showed people sort of testing out this chair. And I was really struck that the adults who were pictured seemed most thrown off by the chair. The children just immediately seemed to revel in it and delight in it and didn't really, seem perturbed that it was not sort of the normal kind of chair. So I'm curious why you sort of leaned into that idea of sort of the destabilizing nature of the chair, because it moves, it rocks.
I think.
And can you? And I don't know if you all have seen the Sinmi. Is that correct?
Sinmi is the name. It means in Yoruba. It means to rest.
And can you just describe the shape of it? Because I don't want to put words in your
I
mouth.
should explain a little bit. I fell in love with Ray and Charles Eames early in my design career, and I was really pushed to think about bending wood. And so when the opportunity came about, I think the bent wood came before the actual rocking. And so the rocking came at a point where I was probably 3 months from showing this piece at the Salon del Mobile. And I think I had an angle on the bottom base before I actually got to rocker. But in one of my critiques, one of my teachers pushed the piece, and it kind of moved a bit more than we expected. And so my next presentation actually had this curved base on the bottom, and it took me to the American rocking chair and so forth and so on.
But just to be clear, you're not sitting in the chair.
You're not
You're
sitting,
straddling
and
the
you're
chair.
kind of sitting on the chair. I like to think of it as a perch. It's not so much. It's something you might do on the back of the couch, or something you might do when you're leaning on a car in a really informal manner. But as I took it to Salon del Mobile, I found that there was so many other positions, if you were willing to try them, that came out of that initial visit. And so, the semi-stool has a lot of curiosity to it. You look at it, and it doesn't look like your average chair. It doesn't look like your average stool, but it pulls you to it. A little bit of curiosity and a little bit of play. And I like to say, in any relationship, once you get used to it, it gets a little more comfortable, and you can trust it. And, it's not a stool for every home, that's for sure. Thank you.
Well, it's masterful.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Michelle, for having us. This is really great.
And Sheila, I'm just wanted to say that I am so thrilled that you work to design the public spaces of the Vice President's residency. And I think you deserve a round of applause for that, because that is historic work. And in the exhibition, there is your beautiful Harlem Toile.
Yes.
And what has that, that work is so well known. And I feel like it is one of the sort of rare instances in which something that originated in the rarefied world of high interior design has just really infiltrated the popular imagination. What has it meant for your career? Has it been, I sometimes wonder when something is that famous, whether or not it becomes a little bit of an albatross or if it's just all great.
No, I think that's true. Can you hear me? Is this okay?
Yep.
So I designed, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Harlem Toile. It was originally called Harlem Toile de Jouy. It is a toile wallpaper, which I designed 18 years ago for my own home in Harlem. And at that time, I always loved toile wallpapers, but I never, and I used to buy a lot of toiles for my clients, and most of my clients do not look like me or anyone on this stage. And I just, even though I always loved French toiles, I never could find one that I felt like really resonated, and that the stories that are told kind of in the toiles really reflected my life or anything kind of about me kind of culturally. So that's really why initially I created the toile 18 years ago. Since that time, I have watched that toile turn into all sorts of things, or at least the design. I've done a lot of collaborations, and we have the wallpaper, textiles. There have been Converse sneakers and Sonos speakers. We have
Cocktail shakers.
We have cocktail shakers and fine bone china with Wedgwood collection, and the list goes on and on. So it has been incredibly satisfying for me, because it means that my story also resonates with other people, primarily who look like me, and that there really wasn't anything like it in the marketplace. And because
And you should describe the vignettes that are pictured.
yeah, so the design has 6 vignettes, and originally it's sort of based on stereotypes about African Americans, but at the same time, all of the vignettes and kind of individual scenes express joy and sort of celebration of Black culture. And a lot of the scenes I chose based on my own. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I also live in Harlem, so a lot of those scenes were really inspired by my own life and growing up in Philadelphia, and also the time that I've spent living in Harlem. So it has been great on one level, but on the other hand, I find that everybody just wants me to do the toile over and over again. Can you do it in a different color? Can you do it in a different scale? And as a designer, an interior designer by profession, I consider myself to be a visual storyteller, but that's not always or only the story that I feel like I can share. And sometimes it's a little frustrating because it's become so well known and so popular. That's the story that everybody wants me to continue to tell.
I mean, when you think about it in relationship to the idea of rest and relaxation and reclaiming time, do you think that part of the reason that people are so drawn to it is because it celebrates a kind of relaxation that does feel so distinctly African American?
I do. I think for me, the idea of reclaiming my time, as you just mentioned, I think sort of pays homage to people who are ancestors who did not have the luxury of relaxation or lifestyle, which is very much the category that a lot of my work and products fall into. So I think it's sort of my way designing it and my excitement about the collaborations we have and the way that it has been received, just makes me feel just on almost a spiritual level, really happy to reclaim this time that our ancestors could not. And I think that's, how I look at it. Each time, each iteration, each time I do something else with someone else or another collaboration, as you mentioned, you own a cocktail shaker, and I know in your artwork you've got these two women who are having cocktails and sharing a meal. Those kinds of things, for me, just make me feel good that people are choosing to have these products and my designs in their home.
When I was looking at the exhibition, and each piece is so beautiful and so distinct, and really, it's each piece is a work of art in the way that it's executed, and I wonder, you are all rare birds in your industry, and is there a tension between your ability to create these really beautiful, rare pieces, museum-worthy pieces, and also being able to express a more sort of, for lack of a better word, sort of, a more people's kind of work? That's a very bad way of sort of getting at that question, but I guess, is there a tension between being able to do these really wonderful, rare, destabilizing, surprising, historic pieces, but also being able to connect to, a very simple concept of, blue-collar folks who might just want to rest and not having access to those sort of rare touchstones that you guys create?
Sometimes you're gonna have to kind of fly under the radar, you know what I mean? You might come up with an idea that is clearly not commercial, but you have a kind of job to do as a commercial designer. And in our practice, we're juggling commercial work with personal artistic work, with our work with communities. And so we're always looking for ways to kind of bring those three together. And it's really hard. It's very challenging to think that, okay, maybe this floor lamp could say something about the immigration crisis, or maybe this wallpaper could say something about ancestry. And those are really big ideas. And how you kind of work that into a product, I think, is the challenge, right? I know in our work, we're looking for ways with regard to rest to kind of acknowledge collective rest, to acknowledge the idea that communities have necessarily come together in order to achieve a space to rest, or the place to rest in. And that often comes through craft. That also often comes through the art that they make. I was just down in Marion, Alabama. I'll tell a little anecdote. Visiting my relatives and kind of reconnecting to my family that came before me, and we visited Gee's Bend for a project we're working on. And in the words of Mary Beth
Which is where
Petway,
all the famous, incredible quilters are.
yeah, for those of you not aware, Gee's Bend is it's a small Black community in southern Alabama that has had a tradition of abstract quilt making that in many ways surpasses some of the abstract art that we know of. And they've been doing this for, since the early 20th century. And so I was just mentioning that Mary Beth Petway, one of the Gee's Bend quilters that we're working with, has said that for her it's about rest, right? Like finding the time to quilt and sitting there is very meditative, and you kind of fall into this kind of restful state. And I think about the whole community that has, in a way, used quilting as an escape, as a means to express that desire to separate themselves from whatever's going on in their lives and make something beautiful. And it's not always possible to do that in commercial work, right?
Right.
But it's something that we're working on.
I just want to take this moment to let you guys know, if you have questions, to please put them, raise your hand. You can get a note card, write them down, and we will ask them before these lovely ladies and gentlemen escape.
I'd like to add just a little bit to the beautiful statements that you both said. I think the rest that we seem to find within my studio, which easily branches out into the community, is
So you're working with the Obama Foundation, the Presidential Foundation, yeah?
yeah, we are designing some pieces for the Obama Presidential Center. All these things that we can't talk about just yet.
All these NDAs up here.
But I think, we're finding rest in working on objects within and alongside the community. So that's a Saturday afternoon, building benches for a garden. That might be the rest that we find. I think a lot of where I find rest today is getting out of the country as far away from my studio as I possibly can, in the efforts to sort of take in this new culture, be it in Nigeria or be it I just went to Brazil for the first time, and that was breathtaking. But I think that, for me, is the rest that I find. I think in the pieces that I create, I try and provide some level of rest inside of that. I am I am using names like Send Me to actually push the idea of this togetherness. Like, I'm listening, I'm trying to be closer to where our ancestors are from. So that's satisfying and sort of restful for me within a studio practice. I think there's a certain level of spirituality that that Sheila mentioned that I feel like I find so amazing when I walk into a restaurant that I designed chairs for, and I look at small groups of, happy people of color doing what happy people of color do in a restaurant with good music and good food. And so that, for me, becomes resting places for me. Places, the legacy of that feels good to me. I was not a close friend, but I studied under Chuck Harrison at Columbia College, and I got to visit him at his home. And just knowing that he had so much work that he wanted to do, but he couldn't do it through these Sears Roebuck avenues, and just knowing that there's a group that's still continuing to do that kind of work in his absence is really sort of gratifying and somewhat restful to me. To know that there will be a coming group of young people that have looked at these folk and said, I think I want to do that, is restful to me.
I mean, you've all chosen your attire, specifically. And I'm wondering, when you think about the role that interiors play in telling your story, I mean, thank you, what role do you think that interiors play versus, your clothing and the way that tells a story about you?
Can you repeat
You
that?
say,
Well, when we were earlier, you were taking pictures and you were, showing off the shoes, and you had clearly made very specific choices about how you wanted to present yourself because your clothing is telling a story. So I'm curious to know what kinds of stories you feel that interiors and furniture can tell that are different and are unique. Sheila looks like she has something she might want to say. I'm not sure.
I'm not joking. Sorry, I'm getting over a terrible cough. I think that, so I'm an interior designer by profession, technically, and the interiors that we design should always be reflective of the people who live in the interiors we design. The interiors shouldn't really reflect my interests or anything that I really want to express, because I don't live in those homes.
But don't they come to you knowing that you do have a point of view?
They do, and I think the idea is, how can I help, excuse me, to encapsulate the way that they live, or their interests and their hobbies, their lifestyle. How do I create an environment based on that information? Or how do I help to sort of elevate what it is, by curating their things and also designing new things, to tell a story. But the story that I'm telling as a designer is their story. It's not my story. Of course, I bring my own, point of view and my expertise to it, but I'm in the backdrop. That's for me, that's the goal. I don't want people to live in a home that, you walk in and say, oh, that's a Sheila Bridges interior. I want the home to look like the client who lives there. And that's why, for me, I love designing products and wallpaper, textiles, because that's my point of view. That's completely separate from what I do on a daily basis for clients. So.
I think it feels like it kind of sits on the line of what all of us have to be really good at as designers, and that is listening And so we're kind of listening for aesthetics when we meet a new client. We're listening through this design brief, and then we're sort of, after all that's taken in, we're kind of adding the hot sauce and the additional accoutrements afterwards to sort of come up, and it feels, and it should feel like a collaboration at the end of that between you and your client.
Agreed.
Does that answer somewhat?
I don't think, I mean, you
Yeah.
asked about fashion also.
No,
right?
no, no, no.
Not-
It was very specifically about your design. I'm just wondering the way that you tell your story through the design. Your view, for instance, of leisure or of calm and relaxation. How you tell that story?
We're always more interested in the ideas than the final object, to be honest. Like I'm not, although I'm sketching like every one of us probably is, we're trying to kind of pull forward something more about the way a thing is made, about its legibility, about what it's capable of communicating, right? And so, you know, we've all heard the adage, every object has a story, but for me personally, I've never been much of a decorator.
Every story has an object.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, every story has a lot of objects, right? And so we all define ourselves as we're all capable of design. This is something that we talk about a lot. Everyone's capable of design. You know, I don't think my opinion is any more important than anyone else's with regard to what you want to surround yourself with. But I think in making those choices, you know, those things really become our lives, right? They really become the story of our lives. And so, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but we're working on a project now, another NDA kind of thing I can't talk about, but it's sort of related.
You guys are so fancy.
It's sort of more in Sheila's camp, let's say. But it's a project that it has asked us, my partner Malik and I, to collect all of our things, the small little, some people call them tchotchkes, the little things that are undesigned, right? That we've collected from our travels around the world, and essentially share that with the world, right? And so how do you, in terms of every object having a story or every story having a lot of objects, you know, that thing that we're making from these objects will actually be our story. But it's also a story about being cosmopolitan. It's also a story about otherness. It's also a story about, you know, let's say the majority world, right? The rest of the world that maybe isn't participating in what we call design with a capital D, but has been making things for generations, and still, you know, those things have a lot of value to all of us, even though they're not designed, quote unquote.
Your answer kind of relates to one of the audience questions, which is what skills and design techniques do you think that you are leaving for future generations?
What skills are we leaving?
Skills are we leaving?
Leaving, or even what skills might you be sort of in the process of creating that might be a foundation for future generations? I know Norman has, sorry,
well,
I'm
no.
just going to say that Norman, I know, has talked about how he thinks every business should have interns, whatever it is. Yeah. So, but I didn't want to interrupt Sheila, so I'll let Norman contemplate that for a minute.
That would be dope. That would, honestly, if we could get every business.
Oh, your microphone.
Sorry. Y'all couldn't hear me? Every business should have, at least 2 interns, particularly in the summer when kids are out of school. It's just like, I don't know, maybe we talk to the government about paying them for us, but that's something else. I think one of the things that I would love to know that was left behind was that, and this is real cliche, that you can do anything. And I think that there is a portal of imagination that we need to allow to happen and influence even more. And so if that's the one thing that a kid could take away from a visit to this talk. I think to really imagine as big as you possibly can, and majority of it will come true. So that's just coming from a little black kid from the south side of Chicago who just had a show at the MoMA. So.
Sheila, you were.
No, I wasn't. I guess I don't know about skills, but I think for me it's about imagination, as you just mentioned, and inspiration, which are so essential, I think, to kind of leave behind. And I know for me, I feel incredibly honored that I have my work in so many different museums and permanent collections, and that when young people, old people, when people see, you know, whatever it is, whether it's a wallpaper or my Wedgwood china, you know, or for instance, our Converse sneakers are at the RISD Museum, that it actually makes students or young people just, you know, think outside of the box a little bit about what can be, what can become. And I know when I was growing up, I went to museums all of the time. My parents were very interested in art. My father was really into photography. We had a dark room in our basement, and I was always developing film with him and photographs. And so art was extremely important in our household. And, you know, for me, learning about the creative process, that's been very, very helpful to me, I think, as I've gotten older. Having respect for the process, the time that it takes to create something. I know when I used to, you know, develop film with my father, if something wasn't right, we had to do it all over again, had to start again. And so, and when we would finish a print or something and it would dry, my father would also frame the work. So it was a very slow process, but I think I gained an appreciation of that. And so I think that that's sort of what I hope, you know, is part of my legacy, is that people will see these things that I've created or that I've designed, whether it's interiors, you know, in an important residence like the Vice President's residence, or it is wallpaper here at this museum. And again, think that they too can create something that transcends history and generations.
Would you like to add something?
I guess I want to pass on not being afraid to do something badly. It's when you're a perfectionist or you feel like you have to do something well all the time, it just like stunts you. I'm still working on it right now.
That's an incredibly powerful gift.
Yeah, just working past it. If it's something that you enjoy doing, and just moving forward, and one day, I don't know, maybe you'll feel better about it in your own eyes, which is, when you're creating stuff, is the most important thing, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I wanna build on that just by saying that, I mean, I think it's so important to remain a beginner, right? To be naive in a sense, and to feel like regardless of what you're doing, you can always do something else, and you can always contribute to something else. And so, I hope that future generations aren't afraid to kind of get their hands dirty and aren't afraid to join forces, right? We place so much emphasis on the individual author, I think, and celebrity in this day and age that a lot is missed in terms of what we can do together. And so that, I mean, I hope that that's visible in our work, and I hope that that is something that kind of carries forward.
You also seem to be advocating for a certain slowness and patience in the creative process, and also drawing deeply from the past and current context. I mean, that seems to be kind of the antithesis of where we are now, where there's so much emphasis on speed and being able to do something instantaneously.
Well, it takes time to make things. I mean, that's that's what you don't see is all of the time that went into this. And I don't know about you guys, but that wasn't necessarily restful time. You know, that was there's some challenges there in getting things done. But I think that yeah, I mean, you have to kind of slow down when you encounter material and you encounter industrial processes and you encounter you know, artisan collectives, and you kind of have to learn to work on other people's schedule in a sense, and realize that there are kind of parallel tracks of progress, right? That we're not in this country and in this space and in this place that we're in now dictating a kind of taste level or the amount of time something should take or the value that something should have, but we're kind of open to being conduits for that, right? In terms of collaboration.
I think, excuse me, the other thing that, I don't know, for me, just made me think of it when you just said that, I think a lot of times people forget about creativity, that it's not just like a gift. I think a lot of people assume that all of this happens very easily, and they see the final result, or they see, you know, this chair or this painting or drawing. They see my wallpaper or a beautiful room, and they just think, you know, it just happened instantly. And the process is slow, and it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of hard work, takes a lot of patience. And creativity is really, to me, it's like any other muscle, that if you're not exercising it and working at it, it sort of atrophies. And I'm sure, like for you, if you're not writing, and you know, you get to be, I've written 2 books, but I find that the more I write, the easier it is to write.
Yeah.
The more I read, the easier it is to write. You know, I have to sort of be immersed in reading and writing to write well. And it's the same thing, I'm sure, for all of our practices.
Creativity is a muscle.
It's a muscle that has to be exercised. It's not just a gift. It is a gift in certain ways, but I believe everybody is creative. It's just that a lot of people don't realize that you have to, like any craft, you have to hone it. You have to keep working at it. And a lot of that also has to do with just being curious and curiosity. I mean, for me, curiosity plays a huge role in designing. So
It's a choice, right? Like we all make a choice to do this work. But
You choose to be creative.
well, you choose to do the work to be creative, right?
exactly.
You choose to express yourself
Right.
creatively, right? But at the same time, you know, I'm thinking about how busy, you know, everyone is today. You mentioned the difference between today and how things might have been before, and how things you kind of have to slow down. But you know, in many ways, we have to learn to choose to rest, right? I mean, I think that's something that, just regarding self-care, thinking back to the pandemic, it just is something that I have to admit that I hadn't really considered before, right? Hadn't really considered the idea of rest being something that I had to choose to do. Rest for me has always been what I do at the end of a busy day, right? But the
Did you have to
choice to
understand that rest was not necessarily wasting time?
Yeah, that's
Go ahead,
tricky.
too
Yeah, wasting time. I mean, I guess what I don't realize is that I find rest in productive ways. And
Interesting.
to rest is also, for me, right, I'm energized by being productive. And we rest in order to recuperate. And I think that for many of us, the creative mind has to be active in order to recharge, right? And so it sounds like a contradiction. I guess.
could co-sign.
But you know what I mean? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
There's times in my life where I just need to cut a piece of wood, like shape a piece of wood, put something together that's sanded, that uses some muscle and memory, and I feel whole again. It's something about it. One of the things that we really sort of hope and pray for in the studio is time to mess things up. If I could do the MoMA show all over again, it would look completely different than what it looks like. But a lot of the times you don't get 2 tries. You don't get to mess it up. I remember
Most of the time.
college, you don't always have time to mock it up before you fuck it up. And that's just the name of the game. But it's one of the things that I try and plan. If the deadline is February, let's just finish it December. It never works that way, but you kind of shoot for these early deadlines just so you have time to make minor adjustments and pivot where you might need to. Time.
So do you make a distinction then between rest and rejuvenation? I mean, are they 2 different things in your mind?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I mean, I can get rejuvenation from, like what Stephen was just saying.
From
like
work.
Just being alone in the studio is, alone with a pen and paper at Haystack Residency is like rejuvenating. It's something.
Or for me, just closing my eyes, and instead of going to sleep, I'm going to work on things that I've been carrying with me for days or for weeks or for months, things that I haven't had time to work on, and it's we kind of equate work with labor, right? And we equate rest with the lack of labor or being able to do nothing. But in a sense, having, as Norman said, the time to take a step back from what is perceived as work and then get to work on the real work, which is the creative work that happens sort of behind the scenes. It is about seeing, it is about thinking, it's about taking the time to kind of acknowledge certain ideas in your head and put those together. In many ways, that for me, and I'll wake up with an idea that feels very, solid and complete, and I'll be rejuvenated because of it, right? Because I've had time to kind of sit with it, you could say.
Well, the question that I kind of wanted to end with, and we've sort of danced around it, I think, is there something that you want to reclaim through your work? Perhaps it is a sense of leisure or a sense of relaxation or a sense of self, I don't know. But I wondered, what is it that you would like to reclaim through your work? I'll start with Norman.
I think it's, I want to say, oh, gosh. Okay, I'm going to say, I think legacy. I think that if I am easy to find for the next person who's looking for an inspiration that might have stories that might relate to theirs, have complexion that might look like theirs, it just won't be such a hard thing to do. And if that's all that comes from it, then, and they get to rock on a weird chair also, then I'm cool. I did my job.
Like that. Michelle? I can come back to you if you like.
Yeah.
That means you're up, Stephen.
Yeah, I'm thinking about spirituality. I'm thinking about how it's so important that we all recognize that the things that we surround ourselves with and the ways of making and the material and the energy and the labor and the policy and all of the things that go into making an object are really an expression of who we are, right? And there's, I think, a connection there that I'm trying to make, which is to equate the creative act with spirituality, and the result of that, a need to have the work communicate at a higher level. And it's it's a personal quest. I'm not sure if I'm getting there or not, but it's something that that I always have in mind.
To have the work touch you in a way that is sort of beyond.
Well, it's always touching me, but whether or not it's touching everyone else is another story. And can design do that, right? And I believe it can. I mean, I think that this work is important, and everything that goes into it is important. And I hope that we all recognize that the built environment around us is ours to manipulate, and ours to play a role in, and ours to find ourselves in. And in finding ourselves in that, for me, it's a quest for a kind of spirituality.
Sheila.
I, excuse me, kind of agree with what Stephen just said. We create these environments that are backdrops for people's lives, and so to me, I feel like what I do is so important. Creating access in a home for a place that makes you feel safe and secure and rested, inspired, all the things that I think that people should feel when they're in their homes. To me, that's an incredible privilege. The fact that I get to do that people trust me, with their homes, because again, they are really reflections of the people who live there, and everybody wants to sort of present their best selves. When you are invited into someone's home, to me, there's just nothing that's more personal in terms of a business that I could be in. So I feel like it's just an incredible gift. But I do separate, sort of the two, the products and things that I design. I feel like I did that for myself, and I did that for us. And when I say us, I mean our ancestors, my ancestors. Whereas anyone can hire me to design their home, potentially as a client. But not everybody can afford that service that I provide. But you might be able to afford a set of $20 coasters at the Metropolitan Museum gift store, and if that set of coasters brings you joy, then for me that's very meaningful.
She's ready.
Yeah, I think reclaiming connection, whether that's with the viewer or with my own imagination, and reclaiming taking my time more often, and hopefully inspiring other people to take their time on whether that's creatively or in whatever avenue they're in. Just slowing down. Everything doesn't have to be go, go, go. And I try and show that in my work. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you all for taking a bit of your time, see what I did there, this evening and spending it with us. And I definitely encourage you to see the exhibition if you haven't already. Thank you so much. And thank you to the panel.
I'll take a picture of y'all. Is that okay? Thank you.
I'd like to thank our panelists and moderators this evening for a wonderful conversation, as well as our audience for coming out to join us. Have a great rest of your evening, rest of the week, and a wonderful weekend.